Hi, welcome everyone to tuning in with us for the Filmmakers Talks, Canadian Shorts through Women's Eyes at the 25th Annual Vancouver Asian Film Festival, VEF On Demand. I'm Regina Lim, Director of VEF Industry. And here today with us, three of the filmmakers from this program is here joining us. So we are here with Dom from Yokomashi, and then Annalisa, sorry, Annalisa with Esther and Sai, and then last one, Kelvin with the receiver. So before we begin by acknowledging that the land that we are broadcasting at is the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh First Nation. And I would like to thank our sponsor, presenting sponsors, Canada Media Fund and public funder, Canada Council for the Arts. So we'd like to let's start with Dom, based on alphabetical order of your name. So, and then you come out and then tell us a little bit about your role in the film and then a little bit of your film.
So yeah, Yokomeshi is a story about these five friends, this group of friends, who all speak different languages. And in order for them to communicate, they use a very popular app called Polyglob. And so that's the only way they have to communicate with each other. But one day the app Polyglob crashes, the entire company goes down, and they're left with just speaking their own mother tongue. So some of them knows how to speak a bit of English, other ones struggle, and they also struggle with this miscommunication to trying to reestablish their relationships and also their online businesses. So this is in a nutshell the story of the film.
Great, thank you so much. And I should have asked Annalisa because hers started with A. So sorry about that. So Annalisa, yes, your turn.
Hi, it's pronounced Anaisa. I co-directed Esther and Sai, which is the story of two immigrant women who meet after a difficult first night in Canada. It's based on the true story of Sai Chu, who is the co-director Rosie's mom, and it's been an absolute pleasure to work on this film. I'm very excited to share it with you all.
Thank you so much. And final, Kevin.
Hey everybody, I'm Kevin Campbell. I'm the co-writer and director of Receiver. Receiver is a chamber horror film that follows Sriani, an idealistic and young Sri Lankan Canadian telephone counselor. She's built her life around empathy and service to others, but has done so pretty consistently at the expense of her own wants and desires. So the film asks the question, well, who is going to defend Sriani tonight when she's hypnotized over the phone by an insidious caller with the power to control her mind? Thanks so much for having us at the festival and for inviting me out to this Q&A.
Thank you so much. All right, so we have roundtable here now. Let's ask everyone, why do you think it's important for you to tell this story? Because all three of them is definitely the reason we program this one is because it comes from a female perspective of the observation. So we just want to see why it's important for yourself to tell the story. Annalisa?
So for me, the story is my co-director's mom's story. So it's probably most important for her to tell this story. But Rosie was acting in it as her mom and wanted a supportive co-director to facilitate that process. And so we decided to co-direct, and I felt very honored to be able to step in and help tell the story. It is an immigrant story, and I myself am an immigrant and have been an immigrant in several countries. So I felt very drawn to this tale because it's very much the feeling of being new to a country is something I'm very familiar with. So that's kind of what drew me to this particular project.
And Kevin?
So at the time that my co-writer Luke Higginson and I were starting to develop this project, my then girlfriend, who was a social worker, was working at a telephone helpline, and I got the chance through her experiences to see the real, very palpable level of empathy and emotional labor that was demanded in the job by both her clients and also her employers. And the more Luke and I had the chance to sort of talk about that, the more it started to scare us a little bit, in the sense that the commodification of empathy is basically kind of the bedrock of the modern social work industry. And the thing is, the more you commodify somebody's empathy, the more you open them up to manipulation and abuse. So it sort of became clear to us when we were playing around with those ideas that if that was a route that we were going to explore, that the film probably wanted to be a psychological horror film. And the Sri Lankan Canadian component of that is very much from my side of the table, because I'm Sri Lankan Canadian myself. And I can tell you, growing up in Prince Edward Island in the 80s, there is and was an absolute dearth of Sri Lankan Canadians, or Sri Lankans really, that were ever seen on screen. So it was important, knowing that we were going to be tackling a film that dealt specifically with the issues of the socialization of women in society and how society sort of treats them within the workplace, that I wanted to find a main character that was going to be very much unlike any that we had seen before in a horror film. And it made the most sense, as far as that commentary went, to be able to, use some of my own background to flesh out the character.
Great. Dom?
Well, the idea for Yokomechi started from kind of an obsession I have with languages and accents. Because I think in the immigration process, which is one of the themes that I try always to explore, I think language is not really well explored in a way. But language, at least for me, has always been a very big obstacle, especially when you want to become a writer or a public speaker. So with this little structure that I created with this short, I wanted to represent what it means where immigrants trying to live in a country where the common language is different from their own, trying to adapt, but then there is this difficulty of miscommunication that is always looming in the back. And also I wanted to explore the idea of how, by customizing the technology that allows to communicate, we also remove a piece of our communication. Like we all speaking a language that is not our mother tongue, but by speaking it, we're actually losing something in that translation. And that's when the all these characters are left in their own devices, speaking their own mother tongue however they can, you discover that there is something more in these characters, that it was actually removed by covering with this nice sugar-coated layer of English and the app itself. So yeah, it was an exploration of what's the process of learning a different language and removing your own from the culture, and what happens in that process. That was kind of what I was interested in.
Mm-hmm. So we don't want to spoil alert, but the thing is, we can tell people a little bit excitement about your story. Like tell us a little bit of your process for the casting, because your story is like people speaking different language, right? So tell us a little bit about that. How do you come together with that?
Yeah, the casting is always one of the most fascinating processes for me. Well, two of the actors, Dario, the Italian guy, and Stella, the Chinese girl, I kind of wrote the character for them. Because I have worked with them in other projects, so I knew how to cast them, what to make them do. Like it was quite clear. The casting for the other three was quite interesting because they all came with stories about their miscommunication issues and how it was for them to just transition from one language to the other one. But more specifically, the most interesting casting was the one of Aya. the protagonist, the Japanese girl, because she came in and she was perfect for the role. We all knew. But then she also told me, you know, the story of Yoko Meshi is kind of the story of my parents, because my father has always been able to speak English, but never quite Japanese. My mother only speaks Japanese and never English. So, but they've been together in law for 30 years. And I don't know how they do it. I'm helping them with the translation, but they've been in law without really communicating fully with their own languages. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. So it's like, yeah, you're basically explaining the beginning or the end of that story, of my parents' story, which is fascinating. So and then we cast it because she understood a lot about that character. She did a great job with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's great. That definitely is one of the interesting process, especially there's a multilingual in your productions, and how you also direct them as well is kind of an interesting part of that. I think we can keep going about that subjects, but let's go to the next.
Actually, the script, like the first 7 minutes, are all dubbed in English, but they're all speaking their own languages.
Yeah.
So it was actually interesting. We had to time the script in a way that everybody knew what the cue was, because like when a person's speaking in Hindi and the other person needs to respond in Chinese, the other person doesn't really know what the previous one is saying. So it was like we have to time those 7 minutes precisely with during a long process of rehearsal, and all the actors help actually building those characters and that dialogue. So it was a very, very collaborative as a process.
Wow.
Use 7 different languages in the entire film. So I had to collaborate. I don't know what to say, man.
I know it's pretty imagine that you have to make a feature about that.
Yeah, they'll take quite some time.
Yes, that's definitely.
Yeah.
So let's go to Alicia in your scenes, and when I got joined is how much of the productions, the color coordination, and that is the period pieces, right? So that whole process, and how long for your team that you sit down with your crew to discuss this, and the vision to come to life, this whole part, can you share that with us?
Yeah, I think Rosie and I, very early on in the pre-production process, we're talking about the visual component of the film, how we wanted it to look, the fact that it's a period piece, the fact that it's something very stylized that we wanted to accomplish. We, with the help of our production designer, came up with a color palette for the film that was communicated to all departments pretty early on. We had a fantastic costumes department, and they worked really hard to find costumes that were period appropriate and within the color palette. It was quite challenging, but they did a great job. And ultimately, it was also just about how to tell the story within a certain visual style, because it came down to wanting to communicate a unique experience and to make it kind of a visual experience as well.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think that's really the joy on the story, especially when we do anything as a period pieces, and you want to create that color palette and what you guys did to draw the audience besides the story of that. That's one thing that really jarred to me when I first watched it, for sure. So so Kevin, like when this horror, and you mentioned a little bit earlier about why that end up is picking up a horror, but then the concept of the story is not a horror story that we have the overall right. It's not a horror story in place, right?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I mean, I work primarily in the genre space myself, and the thing that I kind of love about that is that, horror in particular, but I think many of the types of stories that we can tell within the genre world are really, really flexible when it comes to the types of commentary you can make about the world. I'm paraphrasing a much smarter thinker than myself right now when I say that, like, for instance, in the case of sci-fi, no sci-fi stories are actually about the future. Every sci-fi story is about today. And it's kind of the same thing within the horror landscape. It just uses different tools to do so. So the idea that we had, and from the very beginning, was to take these issues that had been rolling around my personal life, or more appropriately, my ex's personal life, and think about all the ways that scared us being outside of it, and that's what made it a horror film, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, totally. It is how you like to use that to express the subjects that you want to tell, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
a big believer that, like, any story that we might tell in our real lives can be embellished to make it a horror film. It just takes a little prodding in a direction or two. I mean, I think I could probably make a musical that was a horror film. It wouldn't be a very good one because I'm not musically inclined, and there's a reason why I haven't written that yet. But yeah, I mean, I think every story that's out there can be made a horror story, just by looking at it through a certain lens, and that's kind of what I find most exciting about working in the genre space for me.
Yeah. For sure, for sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like horror movie, and we always look for something that, um, has a second layer of the story, not just like come out scary or zombie type, right? So, let's see. Is there any question from our audience? If not, then we'll just carry on with the next thing. Yeah, there's no questions, I guess. Okay, all right. Okay, so go back to, like, why would you choose this subject to make this story in the first place? I mean, because not everyone is the writer for this one. Let's ask Kevin, because this is your co-writer. Why would you choose this subject for this at the first place?
Yeah, well, as I think I touched on earlier, it was a lot of the ideas behind Receiver were things that were just floating around in my personal life and in my relationship at the time, and being able to touch on the Sri Lankan Canadian experience, without making it a really obvious quote unquote immigrant story, I think was important. And that was one of the things that our lead actress, Tahare Vejdani, who's phenomenal, really locked into, because, like me, she's also biracial, and without even realizing it, we had been writing the character of Sriani from what's kind of subtly a biracial point of view, that she was the one to point out to me after we had cast her in the film, and in the lead up to rehearsals. And she was saying, "Oh, this is interesting because clearly this character is not completely Sri Lankan." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And then she laid out her argument, and I was like, "Oh yeah, you're right." Without even knowing, I was injecting more of myself into the story than I kind of thought I was. But yeah, I mean, I think ultimately the important thing was to have a chance to get some of my heritage up on the screen in a way that even now doesn't exist. And the interesting thing is, like, I'm Skyping to you tonight from Toronto, and what a lot of people don't realize is that Toronto, or like the Greater Toronto region, has the largest Sri Lankan diaspora in the world. Like, the most Sri Lankans that you will find anywhere outside of Sri Lanka is here in the GTA. And even here, there is such a complete absence of stories from that point of view, that they're just, I feel like I could overstate the point by saying there was a hunger within the market. I don't know if there was, but there was a hunger within me to get that out.
Right. Yeah, for sure, because that's why the festival is about. That's why we had this platform to showcase a different type of Asian diaspora, to people tell the story, right? So let's go back with that. Like, if you have a magic wand with that story, because since you're the writer, what will you change? What will you add on more for that?
I don't know what, if I had a magic wand, I don't think I'd change anything about the short script. I would definitely weaponize that wand against the feature adaptation that Luke and I are writing right now, just so that it ends up being good. That's it. Yeah, if I had limited wand credits, I think I'd spend it on the feature, not on the short.
Well, maybe it's coming. You never know. Then you can tell what's the story about this Sri Lankan diaspora story for the future, right? So, Dawn, like, yeah. So go back to that. We now aware that you have another feature in the other one. We'll talk about that later time for that. But for this subject, why would you choose this? You mentioned that because it's the story of the immigrants, but why? Why would you want to tell this story? Is it something your personal experience, or you've seen it, a lot of things happen like that around you?
Yeah. First of all, I want to say something to Kevin, that there is a hunger for Sri Lankan Canadian content, because my wife is Sri Lankan Canadian and I don't see anything from it. Like, I literally don't see any content coming from their community. So please make more, actually. So yeah, in terms of subject, well, it was a combination of elements. One was like Kevin likes to work in the horror genre, I like to work in the sci-fi genre. It's like the genre the tools of the genre are the ones that I feel more passionate about, the one that I've been using for a long time. That I used to read sci-fi when I was a kid. Like, it's always been with me, the genre of sci-fi. So there was already an idea of creating a sci-fi story about languages. Obviously, I'm inspired constantly by the community of people around me, because, like, especially when you move to a different country, you have people from different countries. Those are the first people that you meet, and then you becomes your close circle of friends. So I was inspired by them. But the main inspiration was working for a dubbing company. That was kind of the last piece of the puzzle that I needed. I was working for this dubbing company, and I used to watch animation series and films that were first in Chinese and Japanese, and then it will turn in English. So I could follow the entire process. So one day I just had that idea. The idea was kind of fully formed, to have an app that can do exactly that for people. Just translate exactly what I'm saying instantly to you in your own languages, vice versa. So the idea was already there. So I combined that with the sci-fi, obviously, approach, with the immigrant approach and the languages. Any kind of the story came together already formed in a way. So it was not that difficult. It was not like many other things that I've written. This was kind of already there.
Okay.
So
that's great. That's great. So, and Alicia, is like for you're one of the co-director. That the story is with Rosie, and I'm not sure could you speak for her, but if you have something that you can share with, like, besides this is her personal story, and do you know why she want to choose to tell this personal story about that?
Yeah. I think, Rosie unfortunately couldn't be here today. She's on a flight. But Rosie lost her mom a few years ago, and I think Esther and Sai was a very cathartic way to reconnect with her mother, to kind of find a way to honor her memory, and create something that not only spoke to immigrant experience, to women's experiences, but also was it kind of in memory of a person who's very dear to her. And when she shared that with me, I thought, there's something really honorable about, kind of carrying someone's life in film and finding a way to preserve their memory. And that was something I was very passionate about and very interested in when Rosie approached me with this project. And for Rosie herself to portray her mother, I think, was also a very, very, deep and profound experience for her, because it's something so personal to be doing that. And I felt like if there was any way that my presence or my directing ideas could help support that journey for her, then of course I would want to do that. So when she approached me and said, I'm looking for a co-director, I said, well, absolutely, because I wanted to give her the best possible chance of succeeding in this project.
Great, that's fantastic. So we all kind of know that now. Just curious before we go in towards to the end of our conversation, just wondering what is everyone's next thing or something you want to share with our audience? With that, anyone can go first. Anyone
Okay.
can share.
I'm currently unmuted, so maybe I'll go first. Next things, there's a lot going on. I know Rosie really wants to adapt Esther Inside to a feature. So hopefully that, when she's less busy with being a successful actor and director and all of the wonderful things that she is, that she will hopefully start to work on that. And I hope that in whatever way possible that I can support her in that journey. For myself, I'm developing and writing a couple of features and always looking for the next thing. I'm also developing a documentary, so I've got a few things got a few pots on my burners that are all simmering at this point. Yeah.
That's great. That's good. Dom?
So yeah, right now we are in the process of promoting our feature film, which is also a BAF, Residents of Arcadia. So we have ideas about probably another feature in the future, but we are very busy right now with these two films, so it's actually quite challenging to sit down and write and have ideas. We have ideas. We know where we're going, but it's we prefer to stay on the present right now and take care of these two babies for now.
Sure. Yeah. Everyone should check that out. It's a science fiction movie. It's also on our on-demand channel at this point until Saturday. It's like what you say. He loves science fiction, so it's a good science website.
As I said,
yeah. And Kevin, I guess you're gonna make more with like.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, Luke and I are right now working on a feature adaptation of Receiver. In fact, I think next week he's going to have his draft to me to revise. And then solo, I'm this winter going to continue working on a vampire horror film that I've got in the works that's set in Northern Ontario over Christmas time and explores cycles of abuse in adoptive families. It's called Blood Sister, and you can see the outline cards on the wall right behind me here. So that between those two projects, I feel like I'm going to spend a lot of time at this very desk over the next couple of months. So.
Oh wow, it's exciting. So that will be like an independent, or it will be on distribution? Just curious.
Independent, but they're both still at very early stages of development. So I almost don't want to jinx it by saying where I want them to land.
Yeah, I know. I shouldn't say that for you. All right. Let's see. Is any question? I wonder. Yeah. Let me check that out for that. There's some comments coming. Okay. Oh, someone want to ask about Dom, your residence of Arcadia. Okay, but this is a short program. It's maybe we schedule another time, then we can talk about that more, because definitely we want to talk about the feature with that, right? It's just and at this point, there's not many questions come to life. And do you guys have any other last word before we close off our conversation here? So maybe just one thing, because even though it's this short program, but what motivation for you to for that Residents of Arcadia?
Oh, what do you mean?
What is your motivation for Residents?
That was me trying to extend and explore more of the immigration process through the story of actual immigrants, but set in a future that look like the present, with just some little tech involved. But yeah, there was probably a heavier and bolder move into explaining the immigration process. And yeah, of course, the theme of languages, accent, it's all there. But it was like, yeah, it's probably like a bigger version of Yokomeshi, where some themes are explored more and the other ones are left out. But that's kind of what it was. But for that one, the idea was a bit different. Like the idea didn't come from. It was like several ideas that were combined together into a narrative.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, that's great. Yeah, so we don't want to take away too much of time with everyone. So, but thank you so much for everyone to join this conversation, and then we'll round it up in here. Thank you for everyone tuning in with us. It went by fast. It's already past 30 minutes. That's a great story to tell everyone. That's why. So, and if like with the virtual festival, we still go until this Saturday, the evening, and then we have one live virtual 7 o'clock tomorrow. It's called Olympia with the Rent Genus. And then on Sunday, we have in theater screening, a Scotia's Bank at Screen X screening. It's a horror movie. And too bad, Kevin, you're not here. Otherwise, you will be able to see it. It's a Korean international horror movie, and also is a Screen X 270 visual experience for that. And then on Sunday evening, which is our closing award ceremony, then at the Hollywood Theater. So, and that's pretty much is at the end of our festival. And then we have a few more virtual panels next weeks. And so if everyone enjoy what they're seeing, share in social media, FF Vancouver, #FF, #FF25. And so hope to see you all in the near future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Yeah.
Bye.